Hey, what's going on? This is the Body Punch Podcast, and my name is Naz. Let's talk about Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. Now, we've talked about this card. We've talked about Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier numerous amount of times on this podcast. We know how massive this card is in general. We've gone through it in previous podcasts. You can check it out there. But I wanted to focus on the main event and focus on Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor themselves, just on their own. Let's make a deep dive of this. And we all know, like I said at the top, how massive this is for both of these fighters. This is just one of those trilogies that has so much implications for either one. Now, for Dustin Poirier, it's really about taking that initial nightmare that he faced in that first fight that they had, where Conor McGregor was constantly harassing him and really going after him in that fight. You saw how frustrated Dustin Poirier got. Behind the scenes, you could see that all he was thinking about which was what Conor McGregor was saying to him. And he admitted to this at the end of the second fight. And I think a little bit before as well, which is interesting that he gave away this kind of game plan, kind of strategy. But he said that the actual trash talk that Conor McGregor, kind of said to him really affected him. And that might have been, even if it was a small factor, it was a factor in Conor McGregor winning that first initial fight. And you could see it in the style that Conor McGregor was using in that first fight against Dustin Poirier. The style and the game plan that Conor McGregor had in that first fight was all about the counterattacks. It was about baiting Dustin Poirier in. And we've known Conor McGregor to be one of the most ruthless, one of the best counter strikers in the UFC. He's up there. In his heyday, Conor McGregor was one of the best. And you could say that the trash talk was just part of his personality. It was a way to garner views. There could be there could be many reasons why he really focused on the trash talk. And at the end of the day, we just know this being his personality. To trash talk is just the way he grew up. But many people have recognized, and I think I'm starting to agree with this narrative, that the trash talk brought out Conor McGregor's best weapon, which is the counter strike. Be it the left-handed counter strike, the left-handed attack. We saw in the Eddie Alvarez fight and numerous other fights that he uses other weapons, but we know Conor McGregor for that lethal left hand. And the trash talk, like I said before, might be a small reason why these fighters get baited into Conor McGregor's sweet zone for his counterattacks. But it might be a reason. So in the first fight, Conor McGregor got the best of Dustin Poirier. We all know that. It started off by Conor McGregor talking all this trash coming into the fight. And if you really watch the fight at the beginning of the fight, it looked like it was almost an even contest. But you could see one fighter, which was Conor McGregor, kind of throw it into the next gear. And he saw the opening. Dan Hardy did an amazing review of the fight where he talked about all the technique and what goes into it, but he showed a different camera angle to that fight, which I think we need to view that angle more often, because it shows so much that we can't see. Even if you're in the arena, you have to be in that sweet spot where you can see a little bit above the cage, but on an angle to get the perfect view. Unless you're sitting right up close to the octagon, like where the announcers are, or maybe even the front row ticket. But you're still staring through that cage, or if you're watching on TV, you still only have that one angle. The top-down view for dissecting fights, I think, is going to turn into a big thing after this dissection that Dan Hardy did, because it showed a different angle to that fight. And it showed the point where Conor McGregor found that he had the opening. He had Dustin Poirier dazed and confused. So then we get into actually, let's backtrack a little. So then after that fight, let's see where Dustin Poirier's career kind of went to. So he fought Conor McGregor. He lost that one. At that point, it kind of felt like Dustin Poirier had to climb the ladder somewhat, because for Conor McGregor, the Dustin Poirier fight was a big one for him. It was the stepping stone into the great year that he had after that fight, and he had the couple years after. So the fight that they had together was in 2014. Wow. And then after 2014, the next fight he fought was in 2015, and then 2015 was the amazing year, and then he took it into 2016. So the 2014 fight in September with Dustin Poirier was the real stepping stone for Conor McGregor, because then after that fight it wasn't a massive fight in terms of name value, but it was a massive fight for Conor McGregor. Because he went to Boston, and he got the performance of the night there against Dennis Seaver. I remember that genuinely. It felt like a buzz, even though it was against Dennis Seaver, and at the time Dennis Seaver was somewhat he wasn't the same as he ever was, and we kind of knew that this is just something to get Conor McGregor up for it. Even before that fight, he was calling out Jose Aldo, but I remember the hype behind that fight. It was like we were christening a new king in pay-per-views, and a new king in something. But I just remember how important that fight was after that. After the Dustin Poirier fight, to fight Dennis Seaver was a real kind of elevation for Conor McGregor, because he was jumping up in competition against Dustin Poirier, but then he fought Dennis Seaver. Then right after, he fought Chad Mendes, and Chad Mendes' fight was for the interim championship belt, but that was in place, or that happened because Jose Aldo had to fall out of that fight, and then we all know what happened with Jose Aldo. Then Conor had the two Nate fights, and then he had the spectacular performance against Eddie Alvarez to win the 155-pound belt and becoming the first double champion in UFC history. Then he comes back after that 2016 fight against Eddie Alvarez. He does a fight with Floyd Mayweather. Then he fights Khabib Nurmagomedov, loses that one via neck crank, and then comes back and dominates Donald Cerrone and in a welterweight bout. Now, we can see throughout Conor McGregor's career here, after the Dustin Poirier fight, it was kind of like Dustin Poirier got put on the back burner. Nobody really gave Dustin Poirier much thought. I think what happens is that you see Dustin Poirier, you see Max Holloway, you see all these fighters on Conor McGregor's resume, and you think that they're the same fighter. Now, we don't know what would happen if Conor McGregor fought Max Holloway again, but we know that he defeated him once when he was very young in a unanimous decision win. And for that fight, we just don't know what would happen. But you see the name there. You see Max Holloway, the featherweight king, on Conor McGregor's resume, and you think to yourself how amazing and spectacular that is. But then you get someone like Dustin Poirier, who fought him in 2014, and throughout his career, we were like, what an amazing name to have on your resume, defeating Dustin Poirier, because we know how tough Dustin Poirier is. And especially even at that time, Dustin Poirier was no slouch. Before the fight against Conor McGregor, he faced some tough competition. You just run through his resume. He fought against Max Holloway. He fought against Cub Swanson. Even though he lost that fight via unanimous decision, but that was a tough fight. I remember that. At the time, we could see through Dustin Poirier's career, and you could see that he had some real names that he fought against, but when he got to that next level, when it comes to Michael Johnson, when it comes to Conor McGregor, Cub Swanson, Chan Sung Jung, all of these fighters, he wasn't able to just crack that next step. But after the Conor McGregor fight for him, excluding that Michael Johnson fight that I just mentioned, for Dustin Poirier, it was a real. He kind of built himself back up again. He worked on his foundation, you could tell, but I think it was more of a mindset going into it. I think this happens in a lot of sports, but I think when you get a fighter at the caliber of Dustin Poirier, and this is before the Conor McGregor fight, this is before even joining the UFC. I'm talking about WEC days, maybe even before that. Just to have the natural talent and the natural mindset that you have going into these fights, knowing that you're gonna run right through these people because of your natural gifts that you have and the mindset that you have. You're just running people over. But then when you get to that next level, when you join the UFC and Dana White and company are just throwing massive names at you, well, it just brings you just have to reset at some point. And I think the Conor McGregor fight for him was a big reset because of how much mental effort that one took out of Dustin Poirier. And it made him think how much better he could be. And he really reset after that fight. Unfortunately, he did have that loss to Michael Johnson. But aside from that, taking out names like Bobby Green, who at the beginning of COVID, people forget Bobby Green had that resurgence and almost became the COVID king, and having those back-to-back fights and beating Clay Guida and who else did he fight? Lando Venata. Some good names. So Bobby Green was no slouch, and he defeated Jim Miller, and then he had that amazing fight with Eddie Alvarez. Unfortunately, that ended with a no contest, but we could kind of see where that one was going. He had the great fight against Anthony Pettis, where he showed off his jiu-jitsu with the body triangle. And then that crazy fight against Justin Gaethje that he had. And ended that one with TKO punches and taking out a top name in Justin Gaethje, who fought for the belt himself against Khabib Nurmagomedov. And then he had that rematch with Eddie Alvarez, finished the job there, got him with the TKO punches, and then fought Max Holloway again. And this is the Max Holloway featherweight king. Unfortunately, it was I believe it was a quick turnaround for Max Holloway, or it was just, it kind of came out of the blue for him. And this was supposed to be the christening for Max Holloway at 155. But unfortunately for Max Holloway, but fortunately for Dustin Poirier, it was, you could see how much bigger Dustin Poirier got in that second fight against Max Holloway. And not just bigger, he kind of grew into himself. We always knew that at 145, he might have been diminishing his full potential. And, you know, who am I? I'm playing kind of Monday morning quarterback here with Dustin Poirier's career because of how great it's been at 155 for him. But even when you look at him at 155, you see him against Conor McGregor. They're the same height, but he's just built big to put it into those kind of terms. But Dustin Poirier really showed what the difference is between a true 155er who's on the cusp of going on to the next weight division, in my opinion, and a 145er, even though Max Holloway is master for the division, and that's one of the key things that Max Holloway has is being so big for that 145-pound division. He still wasn't big enough to go against Dustin Poirier. Then after that fight, he fought against Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Khabib Nurmagomedov, you know, nobody's won against him. So we kind of, we just, I don't know what to say about that. It's just whenever someone loses to Khabib, yeah, it's a loss, but everybody's lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov. Then he had that amazing fight against Dan Hooker. He won that by unanimous decision, and that's how he got the, that's where the Conor McGregor fight comes in, and the second one. In the second fight that Conor and Dustin had, we talked about this. We talked about this in a previous podcast, but that fight, I don't know what to say, because most of the journalists, most of the people you see reporting about this fight, talk about how Conor McGregor went into that one with a boxing style, with a boxing heavy style. But was that a switch in mindset for Conor McGregor? Or was it more that he was trying something new? Or did he think that was the game plan to take out Dustin Poirier? That's my main question when it comes to this. Is yes, it was a more boxing style, but it wasn't a pure boxing style. Like you couldn't see him using that exact technique that he used, where he's still exposing his head completely at some points and baiting Dustin Poirier to hit him with the shot that he could counter. That style, if you think about it, you think about the great boxers, especially at the lower weight divisions, because that's who Conor McGregor would potentially face. And at the time, it was supposed to be Manny Pacquiao. But could he use that style against those boxers? I don't think so. Those guys have amazing hand speed because that's all they're focusing on. My thing is that the style / technique or whatever, was that the game plan to go against Dustin Poirier? Was that game plan developed because they thought that was what's going to win against Dustin Poirier? Or was that the switch in mentality that let's conserve a lot more energy, let's stop throwing a lot of spinning kicks, let's stop using some of the techniques that we used to cut the cage off with all of those high volume kicks and exhausting kicks almost. What was the main idea? Why did Conor McGregor choose to fight in that style? I think that's my main question when it comes to the Conor McGregor style that he chose in that Dustin Poirier fight. It was, yes, it was odd. It was a little bit different, but maybe that was the game plan that they thought Conor McGregor could win by. And the reason why I think that that's a okay thing is that we see different fighters use different things. I bring this up in multiple podcasts, and if you've listened to some of my past podcasts, you know that I like to bring up the Khalil Roundtree fight that he had where he randomly out of the blue came out with that Muay Thai style that was so different than his other fights. That was a total change in his mentality as a fighter using that Muay Thai style when it comes to Khalil Roundtree. So the question is here is that old Conor McGregor the karate stance and the real, you know, on the toes of your feet type fighter still there? Has he totally thrown that in the garbage, or is that fighter still there? And is he still able to do that? The fluctuation in weight that we've seen in Conor McGregor's career, I don't think gets talked about enough. If you look at Conor McGregor's career, I mentioned it before, but he fought Donald Cerrone at welterweight, which is a big jump for what he was. The fight before that, he was fighting at lightweight. The fight before that, which was which was the Floyd Mayweather fight, that I believe was at 150 something, 150 or something like that. It was in the 150 range. And then the fight against Eddie Alvarez was obviously for the 155 pound range. And then right before that, it was 2 welterweight bouts. And even though we don't think that the fluctuation is that much, switching between all of those weight classes and then being the 145 pound champ at one point, it's still got to take a toll on your body. It's got to be a totally different training camp in each one of those. For the welterweight bout, he's probably focusing on something different. For the 145 pound bouts, it was probably something really different there. And then for the 155, it's a totally different training camp, I'm assuming, between all three of those. So I think the the fluctuation that Conor McGregor has gone through in his career, not just in the weight, but also in the potential boxing matches, in the boxing matches that he's had against Floyd Mayweather, and the potential one against Manny Pacquiao, and who knows how many other potential fights he could have had that were on the table that right when you start thinking about it, I'm assuming that you're going to start training a little bit more in the boxing area a lot more. So there's been a lot of fluctuation, but you look at a guy like Dustin Poirier here. You look at his career after the Conor McGregor fight, he went to lightweight right away, and then he stuck it through there, and that became his home, and slowly grinded his way to the top of that division. There was no fluctuation. There was no boxing matches. There was none of that. It was a straight focus on that 155 pound division. And if you look at just from a non-fight perspective, if you look at Dustin Poirier's career, the real money-making fights for him were around the Conor McGregor fight, and then he had to bounce back from that. And then it might have been the Eddie Alvarez fight, Anthony Pettis fight. The Justin Gaethje fight for me was a big turning point in his career. That's when a lot of the casual fans, a lot of people not in the know, started recognizing Dustin Poirier as one of the top dogs in 155 like he is today. So for him, it was all about the grind of his career. For Conor McGregor, if you look at his career, For him, he was making good money right when he came to the UFC. He had to really showcase himself against Marcus Brimage, but after that fight, he fought Max Holloway, he fought Diego Brandao, then Dustin Poirier, Dennis Seaver, Chad Mendez, Jose Aldo. So what I'm naming off to you is a much quicker rise to the top for Conor McGregor. He fought Marcus Brimage in 2013. Then he had his short little stint in 2013 against Max Holloway, and then he fought Diego Brandao, and then that headed off the 2014 to 2016 portion of his career, which a lot of people have dubbed, and myself included, the magic era of Conor McGregor, where he was calling his shots. He was telling how he was going to finish fights and then actually doing it. So you can see in Conor McGregor's career, there was also a straight shot to the top almost, and he was executing on it. I'm not saying that that's a totally different conversation. I'm not saying that this Conor McGregor got shot to the top because of the UFC having an ulterior agenda or something like that. I'm talking about the earned fights that he had. He was just doing something magical in that era when it comes to 2014 and 2016. So for him, there was the fluctuation in that as well. And being shot to the top also makes you not train in the same places. I'm not saying he wasn't training hard. There was no consistency that I could see in Conor McGregor's career. Dustin Poirier's career, if I could give it one or two words, I think consistency would be one of them. Just consistency in everything that he did. He stuck to that 155-pound division right when he made the decision that he was going to stay there. So how do I see both of these fighters coming into the third fight? If you look at both of them, they have to come in with kind of totally different game plans as compared to the second fight that they had. In the second fight that they had, Conor McGregor went in with his game plan that I was talking about before, and it was a boxing style. I don't think he threw all of his karate kind of stuff out the window. You can't really, he's not a computer or anything like that. That stuff's still in the back of his head, and he knows how to execute on it. So will he come out doing all that jumping karate and cutting the cage off and executing on his left hand and throwing that bomb all the time? Yes, I do believe that. But many people have talked about how this could be a Nate Diaz 2 type scenario where he's recognized that, yes, I can throw all those power shots, I can throw kicks, I can do all that kind of stuff. But if I start throwing leg kicks back at Dustin Poirier, that might be a major part of his game plan. That might be one of the ways that he could execute on his boxing, is to throw more of those leg kicks. Obviously, he's got to defend the leg kicks, but I think that's more of a stance issue than actually defending them. You could see it a couple times. I do believe that he was able to get that leg up and defend, but I think it was more of a stance thing for Conor McGregor. It wasn't like he was not recognizing that those kicks were coming. You could see that his reaction was still to move out of the way. I just think that he was putting too much pressure on that lead leg. And for Dustin Poirier, I think he's got to come in with a different game plan as well, because he's already exposed his last idea, which was to really hammer those leg kicks in. I think that was really much in the moment type decision that Dustin Poirier made. I think he obviously, it's just part of his repertoire to have those calf kicks in there. But I think that he saw it in the moment how effective that they were. I don't think they went into the fight, and I don't think any fighter kind of does this with their coach. But I don't think he went in there and said, "Okay, I'm just going to hammer him with leg kicks." I think he saw the opening there and then executed on it. So I think he's going to have to see what Conor McGregor is presenting to him and execute on it. He's got the cardio capability to keep going longer than Conor McGregor, unless Conor McGregor has developed something crazy in the past 6 months. But Dustin Poirier is one of the best cardio machines in the UFC. So he can hang out there and kind of see what Conor McGregor is going to throw at him, defend it for the first round, because Conor McGregor comes out like no one else in that first round and goes after his opponent. So I think he's got to observe, he's got to recognize what's going on in the moment. But obviously the wrestling has got to be something that he's going to bring in. That would be something new. He got the first takedown in the first round in the second fight. But I got to assume that this is something that Dustin Poirier is really going to focus on in this third fight. I don't see why not. It's just unless he's trying to show something where, hey, I'm going to fight against the best striker in his realm. Well, I would say the best 155-pound striker. Yeah, I would say the best 155-pound striker, and go up against him in his home turf, if you will, of striking, and not just bring him to the ground. I think Conor McGregor will also, and let's just quickly touch on this. I think I'm recording this before the press conference, and I think that Conor McGregor is going to go into that press conference. I don't think it's going to be like the Khabib press conference where it's going to be totally him attacking Dustin Poirier, but there is some bad blood now. I think that Dustin Poirier is going to have to adjust to the moment. Whatever Conor McGregor does is going to dictate how Dustin Poirier kind of reacts. If Conor McGregor is talking a whole lot and trying to get under Dustin Poirier's skin, I think Dustin Poirier is just going to react to whatever is going on in the situation, and he's just going to maneuver around it. So I think that the old Conor is going to come back, but I don't think you're ever going to get the ruthless Conor McGregor where he was just so amazing at trash talking and getting into people's heads. I don't think we're going to see that, but I think we'll see a more aggressive Conor McGregor, because I would put him at a level 0 in their, I would put him at a 10 in their first fight. I would put him at a 0 in the second fight for trash talking. And I think for this one, he's got to be at a 8 or a 7. I don't think we're going to see him at a 10. But who knows? I think if Dustin Poirier claps back at Conor McGregor, maybe we might see some sort of level 10-ness from Conor McGregor. But who knows? We got to see. Speaking like talking about social media and all this kind of stuff, we can see that Conor McGregor is bringing up some things that might get under the skin of Dustin Poirier. But at the end of the day, it seems like Dustin Poirier has kind of faced those the ways that he wants to adjust to this. And what I mean by that, he knows that he went into that first fight with a lot of emotions. He knows that he can't come into this third fight with a lot of those same emotions. But what an interesting fight. I think that this is a crossroads moment for Conor McGregor. We say it in a lot of podcasts and blogs and all that kind of stuff, that if Conor McGregor loses this one, then it's all over for him. But I really do believe that if Conor McGregor loses this one against Dustin Poirier, where Dustin Poirier is the best of the best, in my opinion, at that 155-pound division, if he loses this one, it's going to be tough to bounce back. I think he's still got those Nate Diaz fights that he can do, and Nate Diaz kind of showed that he's up there facing Leon Edwards, who's going to be hopefully eventually fighting for that belt against Usman. So Nate Diaz's stock didn't kind of drop. And especially when Nate Diaz almost drops Leon Edwards, I think Conor McGregor could still have that fight against Nate Diaz. But it's not like there's going to be 4 of those fights. If Conor McGregor loses this trilogy and then goes into the other trilogy and loses that one as well, then I think that you can't ever say it's over for these fighters, because we see them popping up all the time and they're doing different things. We're even talking about GSP coming back. But I think as an elite fighter, it might be over. But this is Conor McGregor that we're talking about. This is one of the people in the world who you would put into this situation and see them kind of thrive and milk the situation as much as possible. He's so confident. He goes into any of these fights and it seems like he's just walking into Starbucks and grabbing a coffee sometimes. He just lives in these moments. You could even see it in one of the social media posts that he had where all of those fans were standing outside of a restaurant while he was coming outside. You could see that he lives in these moments. He's comfortable in these moments. He works hard probably in the training room, but it's a whole different animal when the bright lights come on and Conor McGregor is standing in front of you. He lives in these moments. It's going to be in front of a packed crowd in T-Mobile Arena. It's going to be amazing. Great fight. Super excited. Obviously, we're all going to watch. Everybody's going to watch. Everybody's talking about this fight. Conor McGregor's coming back. And Dustin Poirier is just, his star power is just rising. What a fun fighter. He's not even one of those fighters that are boring and just winning. He wins by spectacular fashion, knockouts. He's in wars. I was talking about the Justin Gaethje fight. What a war that was. Even the Dan Hooker fight, one of the first fights during the COVID time in the UFC Apex. What an amazing fight that was. What a grueling fight that was. Even Dustin Poirier commenting himself that he doesn't want to be in many of those, but that's just the type of fighter he is. He gets into that cage and you could even see it when he pointed at Conor McGregor and he knew that he got him with that right shot and pointed at him and laughed, and you could see he squared up on Conor McGregor and just threw shot after shot after shot and got Conor McGregor out there in one of the most brutal fashions that we've seen Conor McGregor lose. So we'll see about this fight. This is an amazing fight. Glad these guys are doing it for the 3rd time. It's going to be a fun one, and everybody's going to be watching. It's always great when you got a Conor McGregor Dustin Poirier fight coming. You know that we're in for a big show. And the card here at UFC 264 is no slouch either. We got some big names. We got some big heavy hitters on this card. So I really appreciate you guys listening. If you guys could like, subscribe, hit the bell notification on YouTube, give me a comment. Let me know what you think about this fight. I think it's going to be a fun one, like I've said so many times in this podcast now. But let me know what you think. And if you could listen to the podcast on the different podcast networks, that'd be highly appreciated. If you could give 5 stars, give a review, all that good stuff on iTunes, that helps the podcast so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you again for taking the time of your day, night, whenever you're listening to this, and just listening to me talk about these 2 amazing fighters. I really appreciate it. So thank you again. My name is Naz. This has been the Body Punch Podcast. Bye.